All right, let's dive in today, huh? We're going to tackle these gold IRAs. Everyone's talking about them for family wealth and all that.
Right.
We've got some research here, and it looks like they're saying it's a whole different way to think about your assets, not just your typical stocks and bonds.
Yeah.
It seems like the big idea is that gold, it can kind of help you weather those market storms and inflation, especially with how things are going these days. What are your initial thoughts?
Yeah, it's really interesting how these sources point out that you can actually hold real gold and silver,
Oh, wow.
platinum, palladium, like within an IRA.
Really?
It's pretty different from, those typical assets, the paper assets we usually see.
So wait, instead of just seeing numbers on a screen, you could actually have like a gold bar. That's part of your retirement plan. That's kind of a wild thought, right?
Yeah.
Like you own a piece of something tangible with all that history. Does that like change how people approach these IRAs?
Yeah, it might. I think a lot of people, they find comfort in having assets they can see, they consider inherently valuable.
Right.
And gold has this long history as a store of value over centuries.
Yeah.
So it might make people feel more secure, especially when the economy's not doing so well.
Makes sense. One article I was looking at, it argues that this becomes even more important when inflation is high.
Yeah.
If everything costs more, but your gold is holding its value or even going up, it's like you've got a buffer against losing your buying power. Do you think that's like the main reason people look into gold IRAs?
I mean, it's definitely a factor, but we have to look at the whole picture, right? Gold can be a hedge, but we can't ignore its limitations. Unlike stocks, for instance, gold doesn't pay dividends.
Right.
It's not like owning a part of a company that's, potentially growing.
That's a good point. It's not about putting all your eggs in one basket, right?
Yeah.
Even if it's a golden basket.
Yeah.
So then how do you actually fit a gold IRA into an overall strategy?
Yeah.
I mean, we all want a stable future, right?
Yeah.
For ourselves and our families.
Absolutely. And that's where this source talks about gold IRAs as a tool for estate planning.
Interesting.
So by passing down a tangible asset, something with potential long-term value, you're giving your heirs a safety net that's different from just the usual investments.
That's a really interesting way to think about it. It's like you're transferring a sense of security across generations, especially if, your heirs might be facing tough times down the road.
Exactly.
What about the taxes, though? I mean, that always seems to be the big question mark.
You're absolutely right. One source points out a really big advantage: tax deferral.
Oh, okay.
So with a gold IRA, just like your typical retirement accounts, you only pay taxes when you take the money out.
Right.
So it can potentially grow without an immediate tax hit.
Okay, so for someone who's, in a high tax bracket, that means their money could grow in that gold IRA for a longer time, right?
Right.
Without having to pay a bunch of taxes up front.
Exactly.
Almost like giving your investment more time to grow and compound. But is there a catch? There's always a catch, right?
Well, there are nuances. It's not quite like a Roth IRA, you see. With gold IRAs, you have these things called required minimum distributions, RMDs.
RMDs.
Once you hit 73.
Oh, right.
And those distributions, they get taxed as ordinary income. So you get the benefit of, not paying taxes while it grows.
Right.
But you do need to plan for those withdrawals.
That's a good point to highlight. So it's not just set it and forget it.
Yeah.
You actually have to think about those RMDs down the line and how it affects your taxes. I mean, wouldn't a good financial advisor be able to help you navigate all that?
Absolutely. A good advisor can help you put a plan together to minimize the tax impact of those withdrawals, so you get the most out of your gold IRA, throughout its life.
Yeah.
But that actually brings up a really important point from what we were reading. Even with all these advantages, a gold IRA shouldn't be your only investment.
Right. Diversification. You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, right?
Right.
No matter how shiny that basket might be.
Exactly. And that's actually where we'll pick up in the next part of our deep dive, exploring how to balance a gold IRA with a well-rounded portfolio.
Right. Okay. So we know a gold IRA is probably not the only answer.
Yeah.
Right. It's just one piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
So what's that missing piece? How do you actually build a portfolio that includes, precious metals, but also makes sense for the long haul?
Well, it's all about balance. The research, it really stresses that a gold IRA should be just one part of a diverse portfolio.
Right.
It should work with your other assets. It's not about going all in on one thing. It's about allocating strategically.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like you wouldn't build a house with only bricks, would you? You need wood, concrete, maybe some glass, for those fancy windows.
Exactly. And just like an architect designs a house to handle different stresses and pressures,
Yeah.
you build a portfolio to weather the ups and downs of the market. It all comes down to understanding what each asset brings to the table.
Okay, so break it down for me. What are the building blocks, if we're talking about a portfolio that might include a gold IRA?
Well, let's start with the familiar stuff. Stocks. They represent growth potential, a stake in companies that hopefully will increase in value over time. But stocks, they can be volatile. They're affected by those market swings. And that's where bonds come in.
Okay.
They provide more stability, some income, and they often they act as a counterbalance to the stock market going crazy.
So stocks are your high growth, potentially high risk part. And bonds are the more like steady, predictable ones. What about something more tangible, like something you can actually hold?
Yeah, well, that's where real estate often comes into play. It has that tangible value. It can generate rental income, and it's often seen as a hedge against inflation because property values tend to go up as inflation rises.
Right.
But real estate, it's not as liquid as, say, stocks or bonds. It takes time to sell.
I see. I see. So we've got stocks for growth, bonds for that stability, real estate for something tangible, for income. Where does a gold IRA fit into all of this?
It adds another layer of protection, especially against, economic uncertainty and your purchasing power eroding because of inflation. Gold has historically held its value in times of trouble, potentially offsetting losses in your other investments.
So it's like an insurance policy, but instead of a piece of paper, you've got actual gold tucked away.
Mm,
But all this talk about allocation, it's kind of making my head spin. How do people figure out the right mix? Is there a magic formula?
I wish. But no, unfortunately not. And that's where all those disclaimers come in, right? Past performance doesn't guarantee future results and all that.
Right, right.
A good financial advisor, they're not going to give you some cookie cutter plan. They'll work with you to figure out the right mix based on, your goals, your risk tolerance, how long you plan to invest.
So it's not just about knowing what each type of asset is. It's about understanding why you choose it and how much of each makes sense for you specifically. That's where a professional's advice is really valuable.
Exactly. For example, someone in their 20s, they've got a long investment timeline, right? They might lean more toward growth-oriented assets like stocks, but someone closer to retirement, they might prioritize protecting their capital and getting some income, so maybe more bonds, maybe some real estate.
And a gold IRA could work with either of those, right? Like a little safety net, regardless of how old you are or how much risk you're comfortable with.
Exactly. But let's focus in on the gold IRA itself for a minute. One thing people often don't realize is that setting one up, it's different from a traditional IRA. Like the whole process is different.
Oh, really? So it's not as simple as calling up your broker and being like, hey, I want some of that gold.
Not quite. You'll need to find a specialized custodian. They're like a secure storage facility, but specifically for the precious metals in your IRA. They handle all the logistics, make sure your gold is stored safely, follows all those IRS rules.
So no stashing gold bars under the mattress, huh?
Definitely not a good idea. But choosing a custodian, that's a big decision. You're trusting them with valuable stuff, right? So you want to look at their reputation, their experience, their financial stability, how secure their storage is, all of that.
Right, right. It's like choosing a bank. You want to make sure your money's safe and that you trust the bank itself.
Yeah.
But what about the gold itself? Any gold bar will do.
Actually, no. The IRS, they have these strict rules about what qualifies. You have to meet these specific purity standards for the gold in your IRA. We're talking 99.5% pure or higher for bars, and then specific coins like American Eagles or Canadian Maple Leafs.
Ah, so there are actual standards and rules. It's not just any shiny object will do. And within those rules, do people have choices? Like what types of gold can they actually get?
Oh, yeah, you have options. There's the classic gold bullion bar, that solid chunk of gold you see in the movies. But lots of people like gold coins. They have their own appeal. They often have what's called numismatic value, meaning they're collectible, on top of the gold content.
Oh, interesting.
So they could potentially appreciate even more.
So it's almost like having an art collection within your IRA, but instead of paintings, you've got these gold coins, with history and potential to go up in value. That's a lot different from just picking a random stock.
It definitely adds an interesting dimension. But whether you go with bullion or coins, it's still an investment decision, right? Research is key. You need to understand each type. What are the pros and cons? What are the premiums? What's the potential resale value? and get guidance from a financial professional who really understands the precious metals market.
This is all really insightful. It makes you realize how much there is to learn about gold IRAs. It's not just buying gold, it's understanding custodians and purity standards, bullion versus coins. It's like a whole world unto itself.
It really is.
Yeah.
And that's exactly why we're doing this deep dive, to give you the knowledge you need to make smart decisions. But before we finish this part of our exploration, let me ask you this. Imagine you're holding a gold coin. You know it represents financial security, but also a piece of history. What does that feel like? What emotions come up?
Wow, that's a great question. And it takes us beyond just the practical side of investing, you know. It gets to the heart of why gold has fascinated people for so long. And that's actually where we'll pick up in our final segment, exploring that historical and emotional connection to gold and how it shapes how we think about wealth. It's really interesting, you know, we spent all this time talking about the how-tos of gold IRAs, the rules, the strategies, all that. But gold is not just another investment, is it? It has this whole history behind it, this emotional connection you can't really measure. That's what I keep coming back to in these articles.
Yeah, it's true. Gold has this allure, this draw that goes beyond just its price tag. It taps into this feeling of permanence, you know, like it has a value that doesn't change even when the markets go haywire.
Right, right.
This one source, it even suggests that gold's its reputation as a safe haven, it might be tied to this psychological need we have for stability, especially in a world that feels so uncertain.
Like we were talking about earlier, just that feeling of holding a gold coin. It's like you're holding a piece of history. It's almost like connecting to this chain of human experience going back centuries.
Yeah.
From like ancient civilizations using gold, you know, for jewelry and money,
right,
to people today who are looking for protection against economic crashes. It's this constant thread through history.
Absolutely. I mean, gold has seen it all, right? Yeah. Empires rising and falling, currencies coming and going, yet it still holds its value. It's a testament to how appealing it is and its inherent qualities. One source even mentioned a study where people associated gold with feelings of security, of control, even status.
That makes me think about how gold has survived everything. Wars, famines, political turmoil. It's like it's seen it all. A silent witness to human history, carrying all these stories of people and societies. And, you know, in a world where everything feels so digital, so temporary,
right, that
connection to something real, something lasting, it might be even more powerful.
That's a really interesting point. The source touches on that idea, the contrast between, you know, how abstract modern finance is and how concrete gold is.
Yeah.
When the stock market crashes, when those digital currencies go up and down like crazy, gold is there. It's like this reminder that some things still have value, no matter what the market's doing.
It makes you think about the psychology, right? When things are rough, when everything feels uncertain, gold represents that stability. It's something you can hold on to. A reminder that even when the world feels chaotic, some things don't change. Maybe that's why it's always been so tied to the idea of protecting wealth and passing it down through generations.
And the research definitely highlights that connection. When you pass down a gold IRA, you're not just giving someone money, right? You're giving them a piece of history, a symbol of something that lasts.
Right.
It's like saying, this has stood the test of time. I want you to have a part of that.
It's so much more than just the money. It's about passing down values.
Right.
Prudence, thinking about the long term.
Yeah.
Values that have always been linked to gold.
Exactly. Connecting future generations to something bigger than themselves, to a legacy of resilience, of lasting worth.
So it seems like as we wrap up this deep dive, gold IRAs are more than just a way to invest. They're this combination of practical benefits and a deeper emotional pull.
I think that's a great way to put it. They offer diversification, tax advantages, the potential to protect your wealth, and at the same time, they connect with this very human need for stability, for something that endures.
We've covered a lot today, from the nitty-gritty of setting up a gold IRA to the history and the psychology behind gold.
I hope our listeners have a better grasp of these unique investment vehicles, and maybe they have a better idea of how they might fit into their own plans.
Remember, the more you know, the better equipped you are. By understanding gold IRAs, you can make choices that are right for you, for your goals, for what you believe in.
And whether you're looking for financial security, a hedge against uncertain times, or a tangible link to history, a gold IRA might be something worth exploring.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We hope it's been helpful and given you something to think about. And as you go on your own financial journey, remember to think not just about the numbers, but about the values, the feelings that shape your relationship with wealth. Until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep building the future you want.